Admittedly, hockey is not my favorite sport in the world, but is there something we could learn about it in how we do substitution patterns in the college basketball? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Thursday, September 7th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, joined, as we are every week now, by Coach Bill Robinson, the head basketball coach at Milligan University. Go Buffs. We want to thank you for joining us today on Locked On Tar Heels, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app right now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, a couple things we want to hit on. It is the beginning of a new school year, and so we're going to have Coach talk to us a little bit about, hey, what are the things you're trying to accomplish before basketball practice actually gets going? How are you bringing in the new guys? How are you getting everyone together? It's going to be a neat conversation, and we've got story time with Coach Rob coming up at you, and he was telling me a little bit about it. And Coach, I'm very excited to hear this story today. But before we get to all that, the first conversation we're going to have is about the possibility of a hockey line change with substitution patterns. Let's set it up, tee it off from an email we received from Richard Holmes that reads this way. This is back from this summer. He says, I wonder if there is ever a time that UNC might look at running a full rotation 5 in and 5 out. This has been a question with the transfers and now with the Cadeau reclassification as well as Jalen Washington and Seth Trimble. This would keep our guys fresh all the time. Just a thought. Now, Coach, this is a really interesting idea from Richard Holmes. Obviously, I remember Coach Cal trying to do this at Kentucky a couple years ago until I think some injuries derailed it, if I remember correctly. And obviously, Coach Smith and Coach Williams were famous for the dudes on the court aren't doing well. Let's throw in 5 walk-ons. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about scholarship level players coming in for one another. So, Coach, what I want to do is have a conversation about the idea of this in general, and then look at it from the specific standpoint of North Carolina this year and how it could or could not work. So let's start with the general idea. What do you like or dislike about this platoon system?
All right, let's talk about the likes first. First of all, you got 11 scholarship guys right now. I think all 11 can play. So you're going 5 in, 5 out. You're going to get a lot of minutes from a lot of different people. You're not going to have that wear down factor we had 2 years ago where it gets down to the Final Four and there's just no legs left. So there's a lot of positives about that. Camaraderie, team-wise, everybody's happy because everybody's playing and everybody's getting their minutes. Everybody knows they're going to get a certain amount of minutes. So there's a lot of positive thoughts about that. The negatives, in my mind, coming especially from Carolina, is if you have All-Americans, you've got an Armando Bacot. How do you tell him he's only going to play 20 minutes a game? How do you tell RJ Davis after he hits 3 shots in a row that, his time's up and he's got to come out? He's feeling it. How can you explain that to him? There's some negatives there. From a Carolina perspective, from a Division I perspective, you got guys playing for things down the road. And if they're playing for that, numbers matter. How many points you score, how many rebounds you get. Scouts are looking at that. Now they're looking at videos too and seeing it. But if you're trying to play in the NBA someday, you score 20 points a game, you're averaging 12 points a game. That's a big difference. And those are things that those guys are looking at. They got to get their numbers. They got to, it's NIL stuff. They've got to be able to be the guy or be the man in order to get that money. So I think it's easier maybe at my level to be able to convince our kids because it's complete, total submission to the team.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. It can be a great thing. It all is okay as long as you're winning. And that's what it all comes to. And if you're winning, you can sell that to guys. But if you're losing, that path's going to go down it's going to go bad quickly.
Yeah. I think one of the most famous consistent examples we see of it is at Grinnell College there in Iowa, who I think they actually do 3 like all 15 guys coming in and out, but they got that whole different folks. If you've never watched what Grinnell does, you need to just get on YouTube and check it out. It's insane. And I love it, but that's also not what we're talking about here. Now here's a thought that I have with it, Coach, is I wonder from an approach standpoint, you talk about like Mondo getting his minutes or RJ getting on fire and then coming out. Do you do it like, this is who my starters would usually be, and that's who I'm going with, and then my next set is like essentially the B team? Or if you're legitimately going for this approach, do you split up guys like RJ and Armando so that you've got RJ on one team and Armando on the other? For me, I think about it as like somebody who's putting bands together for leading worship in a church setting. If I'm going to spread the love around, I'm not going to put my best guitarist and my best bass player and my best drummer together. I want to spread that around. What would be the approach? Like, if you were doing this, which one of those would you go with?
I think one of the things you see is how well they play together. So if you have guys that just click, you guys that, and maybe it's experience, or maybe it's two guys who played together in high school, but I wouldn't want to put my best 5 on the floor first. You don't want to see big drops down. That would be very negative. So you mix it up, in a way that maybe makes more sense, where it stays as even as possible. You don't want to see the big drops. But from a personal perspective, I actually had this happen to my daughter here at Milligan, where she was a second-team All-American as a sophomore, brought in a great recruiting class, and Coach Aubrey decided he wanted to go 5 in, 5 out, and it didn't work. And here I am with my colleague, my guy, and we had told Sarah ahead of time, if you guys have conflict, I'm on his side, because we work together every day. And I didn't say a word, and it was about 4 or 5 games in where it wasn't working. He went back to a traditional lineup, and they started winning. And again, winning is the ultimate key. And as long as they're winning, you can adjust things. But I think in Grinnell's situation, they recruit that way. The kids know that ahead of time.
There you go.
So it's easier to sell it to those kids. This is who we are. You want to be part of us. This is what we do. This is how we are. If you're going to come here, this is how it's going to be treated. Some guys love it because they know that they're going to play. And some guys, maybe not so much, and they just decide not to go there. But I think it's easier if it's already been established as this is who our tradition is. This is who we are.
Yeah, that very much has to be a programmatic constant, right? It can't just be like, oh, we're going to roll this out and try it this year and see what happens. I love that point about you have to recruit to it, because otherwise there's no way it's going to work well. Coach, is this something you've ever, I know you said the women's team there at Milligan did it. Is this something you yourself have ever considered? And whether you have or not, what are some of the main things you would think about if you were going to actually go forward with it?
Never done it. Have never. But thinking about it now, because with the guys we have coming in right now and the depth we have coming in right now, I could see us doing that. And we don't have, say, that All-American guy. We've got, some really solid pieces. We have some guys we think could be all conference that have just come in, but none of them have established themselves, say, hey, I'm the guy. I'm the All-American. And this is something we talked about. We want to play faster. We want to play more up-tempo. Why not give it a shot, at least early on, and see how it works? But again, it takes that full surrender, that total surrender to the team. We don't have guys necessarily trying to make it to the NBA, but we do have guys who want to have aspirations to play professionally. So we've got to give them the opportunity to reach their goals too. But we want to win games, and if we can win games doing it, I think it's something we'll definitely consider.
And I think ultimately it's interesting because you keep coming back to that, and because it's the most important thing. At the end of the day, if you're putting W's on the scoreboard, that's the thing that matters. However it is that you get there, congrats to you, as long as at the end of the day, I've got more points than the team on the other bench. I think that's what we're talking about. Well, Coach, I was just starting to think about, like, if we were to take Carolina and divide it up into a blue and white team this year, I think there are some obvious guys you would split up, right? Like RJ and Elliot, you probably keep them on different teams, but then you got Seth, and it's like, who does one of the important things you said is the best fit. And I think that is the thing I keep coming back to is maybe you keep RJ and Elliot together and Seth could be the leader of one of the two teams, because maybe there's a world in which, because of RJ's shooting capability, you really want Elliot putting the ball in his hands. And then maybe you put Cormac with Seth Trimble and let Seth get the ball to Cormac. There's all these variables to me. And so if Cormac's with Seth, and I'm probably putting Paxton Wojcik with RJ and Elliot, it's like the dominoes are falling there. Are there any combinations like that you're like, man, that's who I'd really want to see play together?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put the 5 that we've talked about being the starting 5 together, but I still think RJ and Elliot together are just going to be special. Now, I think once they learn to work together and how RJ is going to get his shots, because Elliot's going to set him up the way he wants to, I just don't want to separate those two. I like Seth in the second group, bring that energy, bring that defensive energy, maybe even go full court with that group.
Ooh.
Put, Paxton with that group because he's got lots of energy and the length. And I like to see Paxton and Cormac together and Jae'lyn Withers together. And then maybe James at the 5 with that group and see Harrison stay with that first group. Boy, that's really dangerous, to think about the different lineups that they have. And they could all change gears. You got Armando, you throw it, you pound it in the post, you play real big and everything goes through him inside out. And then you bring the second group in that just flies around the gym. Be really exciting to see.
It would be. Obviously, we get that in intra-squad scrimmages a lot. Unfortunately, that blue and white scrimmage got canceled because NCAA, man. It's just we just keep bringing it up and woof. Coach, I love this idea. I've just been scribbling down all these lineup combinations over here. Ultimately, I don't think we'll see this happen this year. Let's be realistic about it. But it is a fun little exercise to think about for sure. Now, we talked about Elliot Cadeau. We talked about Zayden High, or I guess we really haven't yet. But those 2 freshmen coming in, and then this whole mess of transfers. I gotta try to figure out, what do you do as a coach when you're starting the school year? What are the things you're making sure to do and set up and bring guys in? I want to ask Coach all about these things in just a second. But before we do that, I need to tell you that today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs that helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's really easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs, and then you just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions, they make it really easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then ultimately hire. Because honestly, hiring the right team member can have a positive and measurable impact on your business. This is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. So check out LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. And again, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Once again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Folks, college football is off and running. The Tar Heels are 1-0, got that great win over South Carolina on Saturday. App State coming up this week. And to get ready for every weekend, Locked On has a new thing called College Football Kickoff Live, coming at you every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. It's got great information that you can check in on. So come be with us on Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Locked On Tar Heels YouTube page. Coach, it is a new school year. This is week 3, I think, for you, right? And so, yeah, you're just a little bit into things now. We're still several weeks away from full-on practice going and getting things really rolling. But what I want to look at is, how do you do a new school year? What are the things? Let's start in the summer. Are there things that even before the guys get back on campus that you're doing to prep and get ready for their eventual return? And you can answer that from your own perspective or what the Carolina coaching staff to be doing, or just general principles. What are the summer things that have to get done before the dudes are back?
Yeah, one of the great things we get in the summers is camp. And we had 165 kids at camp the last week, and to bring our guys into work. It's only a day camp. We're done at 3:00, but it gives, especially with the new guys, gets a chance to connect with the guys that are here. They get to be on campus. They get to know where the local hot dog spot is, where to get the oil change, how to get to Walmart, all those little things that usually take time once you get here and the semester starts. They already feel comfortable. They already, know exactly what's going on. So that's big for us. When they first get here, we want them to be a regular college student. Go do all the welcome week stuff. We don't want to be in the gym. Go to the Doe River Gorge Day and go to the drive-in movie and get a chance to do the cornhole tournament and just be a regular student. We want them to fit in. We don't want them to always be separate just with the basketball guys. And then when conditioning starts, we had a great conditioning session in the beach volleyball pit yesterday, out in the sun and doing footwork stuff and jumping but that's where they really bond, and they're just putting in super hard work. everybody's getting excited and towards the getting ready for practice here in a couple weeks. But those are the types. It's just about spending time. This Saturday we're going to UT football, and we're going to work, and we're going to be in vans for 2 hours down and back, and we'll spend the whole day down there. But it's the opportunity for the guys just to be together. It doesn't even really matter what we're doing. We're not an NIL based. We're sitting here trying to raise money the old-fashioned way by working hard, but just to spend time and JV varsity guys together. And they may not practice together, they might play together, but they know that we're all part of one big family. And just being able to spend time, finding ways to spend time together is just crucial this time of year.
Tennessee's playing Austin Peay this weekend. Is that right?
It's not going to be much of a game.
Not much. Sorry, I catch it. Yeah, it should be an easy win for the Vols, but we'll see what happens there. Coach, what? And I know this is true of any team, whether it's sports or work or whatever it is. Time spent together is probably one of the single best things a team can do. What kind of trust does that build? What kind of just belief in one another? Like, why is it so critically important to just have time together?
Yeah, one of the things when my guys love cheesesteak night. We just do cheesesteak night at the house, and I cook. I don't want my wife to be involved. Just you like cheese, you like onions, you want mushrooms, you want it just plain. And the guys will come in, give me their order, and I just sit there in the kitchen, put it all together, and get it out to them. But at that time, they're still sitting around, spending time together, getting to know each other. And a big part of the game is about trust. And to really build trust, you've got to be able to get together and really get to know each other and dig deep. And it's not necessarily knowing what's your favorite color, what's your favorite movie, but those are important too. Who do you root for? Give us some kind of connection. As a coach, it's important. If I know that they're a Carolina fan or they're a Tennessee fan, and then if the games happen at night, I get a chance to connect and just be able to ask them about it, something to be able to give us a connection where we have something to talk about. Who's going to sit in a van next to me? Who's going to ride shotgun with me on Saturday? Is it going to be a returner, or is it going to be somebody new, somebody I can really dig and find out more about their family, about their life, what makes them tick?
Yeah.
And I think that's so important as a coach. My office door's open. That's why I'm not doing my podcast from my office, because there's always somebody in my office, which is great. That's what we want it to be. But it's that constant building relationships over a period of time.
Man, that's good. And something you hit on there that I didn't even mention is I was talking about them building trust and relationships with each other. Man, it's all about that two-way street with you as well. So there's this horizontal relationship with one another, and there's this kind of vertical relationship to build with you and the rest of the coaching staff. And all of that comes together for hopefully a great success formula. Coach, you talked about riding shoddy with you there, whether it's a returner, a freshman transfer, whatever. Are there specific things you're working to do to get those new guys, whether coming from high school or other schools, worked in to the returners, like whether it's on the basketball side, whether it's just the academic side, whatever it is? How do you get those guys to feel like family and that they belong?
And one of the things we do, especially in practice, is we have drills that are shooting drills together. We always want to make sure we get a returner with somebody new, so they know exactly what and then I don't have to reteach everything specifically. They know exactly what is expected in each drill. From an academic side, especially if you have guys who have the same majors, making sure they have maybe the professor that they want to have, or if they can learn how the tests are given or what expected with papers. It's easier to be able to be successful if you have a better idea and not have to go through that first test. Sometimes that first test, if you know just even the type of questions or what kind of content they're looking for, it's a whole lot easier. During the season, we do a thing. We do it at Christmas time. We do Buff Olympics, and I've actually talked to Hubert about it. And we actually split up the team. The upperclassmen are the captains. The coaches get drafted. Our athletic trainer gets drafted, and we do bowling, ping pong, billiards, 2K, trivia, dice games that we learned at camp when it's, raining outside and you got to keep the kids busy. We learned these little dice games and I'm the commissioner. So I keep track of all the points, and then we have a winner, and then the winners get some kind of prize at the end. It doesn't really matter, but it's fun to see how they connect. And when the upperclassmen are captains, you can't have freshmen versus sophomores versus juniors versus seniors. They're all mixed in together. And then you have the coaches that are involved too. So then the guys see their competitiveness when it comes to the bowling alley or whether it comes to, a trivia. It just gives us a way to bond. It keeps them from just going back to the dorm and going to sleep. It keeps them from just, just disappearing. We want them to try to keep them together. So we usually do that at Christmas because there's no class, there's more time, and more time for guys to disappear and just go sleep. So, and more time to be able to spend time at the house with the family. So that's one thing we found super valuable for our program. And I've tried to push it to Hubert, and when they have their resources, they can make it into a full-blown, really cool tournament. So it's good to see who's competitive in something that means absolutely nothing. You can find out who your real competitors are.
Can always learn something in coaching, regardless of what's going on. I think that's an important thing to be aware of. Coach, something that occurred to me as you were talking about that is, do you find that you are the one having to do a lot of the culture setting with the new guys, or do the returners in having those conversations you're talking about, do they take care of a lot of that, or do you have to do it more?
I think it varies year to year. It depends on how many returners. We're about half and half this year, and we've got strong leaders that are returning. So I don't have to. I feel like maybe the culture, they understand who we are, what we're doing, but yet I still want to set the tone with it. We set the tone on a daily basis, even if it's like a conditioning thing yesterday. I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to watch. I still want to be able to start practice, end practice the way we want to do it. We want to be able to them to know that I'm going to be involved in every aspect of it. But yet we still want those leaders that are here to be able to really set the tone in a physical way. Even though I can't go out there, and I'm not going to go out there and run in the sand around and do what they do. But I still want.
That's an Achilles gone right there, brother.
I've had both Achilles surgeries, so I understand both of them are done. So.
Oh, that's great stuff. I love it. It's great to hear. Thank you for inviting us into what you guys are doing a little bit. I think that just helps give some great framework to how a team is built from day one and even before day one in the summer right there. So coming up in just a second, our favorite time of every show with Coach Rob is Story Time with Coach Rob. He's got a humdinger for you today. We're going to get to that in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Game Time. You looking for tickets to something like, Tennessee Volunteers football like the Buffaloes are going to do this weekend? Well, you should use Game Time to get in on it, because life is always so busy, and the last thing you need to do is be stressed out trying to buy tickets to events. Thankfully, there's Game Time, which has killer deals on last-minute tickets for all the events you want to go to. And when choosing seats for these events, you get to see a picture of what your view would look like with those tickets. Boy, that is such a relief to me, because I'm always trying to figure out, is there a column sitting in front of me? I don't want that. I love to see a view of my seats. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time is the place for the last-minute ticket deals. They have deals on tickets literally right up till the day of the event. So get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy theater, whatever it is, you can find it on Game Time. Plus, the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. In fact, if you find tickets in your same section and same row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Folks, it is time for Game Time with Game Time. Man, I'm just stuck in that ad read still. It's time for Story Time with Coach Rob. For those of you who are just getting caught up with Coach Rob being here with us on the show, Coach Rob is actually in the process of writing a book with all sorts of stories from 2 decades of working the Carolina basketball camps in the summer. He's shared some great ones with us already, and I'm excited to hear what Coach Rob's story is today. Well,
in Twitter, sometimes you see a question that says, if you could have lunch or dinner with one coach, who would you want it to be? And Carolina fans, we'd all love to be able to sit down and just hang out with Roy Williams for a meal. And the coach's party is very similar to that at camp. When Coach was running things, he was always there. He'd come early. He'd usually leave early too. And he'd work the room and get a chance to say hi to everybody. But my assistant, Rob Brendel, at the time, this is a few years back, he's been a lifetime Carolina guy. He grew up in Gastonia. He calls himself the Homer, a Carolina Homer, because he's always just loved Carolina. And we were riding over together to the party. It was on 15501, the old Time Out restaurant there. That was with the Holiday Inn. There was a little restaurant there. And that's where the coach's party was. So we were driving over, and he said, I just want to try to find time to talk to Coach Williams tonight. I said, well, let's come up with a plan. We'll get there. We'll come up with a plan. So we walk in. It is the absolute perfect scenario. Coach Williams is at a table. He's got Steve Robinson on one side. He's got Joe Holiday on the other side, and Porky Spencer's sitting there. And there's 2 empty seats. I looked at Rob, and I said, listen, I'll just go over and sit next to Porky. Porky's my guy. He's the one who got me into camp. They won't think anything of it. I'll have the empty seat. You just walked over. Say, hey, coach, I'll just invite you to sit down. It'll be the perfect scenario. So I get my food, sit down next to Porky. The chair is empty. It's all set up. And Coach Williams is in an awesome mood. He starts telling stories about his relationship with George Steinbrenner and the Yankees and Monument Park. And then he starts talking about his shoe deals over the year. And I mean, he just in one of these awesome moods telling stories. Well, now it's a half an hour, 45 minutes in, and Rob's still nowhere to be seen. And I lost track of time because I'm listening to Coach's stories. We're just having this great time. So I text Rob and I said, where are you? You need to get over here. The chair's still open. So he says, oh, I got talking. And that's usually what Rob does. He gets talking. He's a lot of fun. But he literally gets up, walks around, sees me, comes over and says, hey, can I have a seat? Yeah, sure, have a seat. So I invite him to sit down with us. I promise you, as his butt hit the seat, Coach Williams got up and says, well, guys, it's been a great night. Thank you very much. And he gets up and walks out. And we just died laughing. And I said, where were you? What happened? He goes, I got telling stories over there. I'm like, oh, man, we had the perfect scenario to have some time with Coach Williams, and you blew it. But I always give him a hard time about that because, those times are special, just to be able to sit down and listen to stories. And I think Coach Williams would rather talk about the Yankees and talk about baseball and talk about the Tar Heels. Sometimes he's a lot of fun to get talking about baseball. He loves baseball, but that's one of my all-time favorite stories about Coach Williams and Rob Brendel.
I love, man, that is like sitcom level hilarity right there. Like if anything, what Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will. That's
Rob. That's exactly, that's who he is.
Gosh, unfortunate that Coach Williams is talking about the Yankees, but outside of that, I'll forgive him. As the resident Braves fan, I got my tomahawk over my shoulder there, and so I am none too sad that the Yankees are having a bad year. I don't mind saying. Oh man, Coach, that's a great story. Thank you. What a perfect way to wrap up today's show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Tar Heels. Big thanks as always to Coach Rob for joining us. All his insight and wisdom and great stories as well. He can certainly spin a tale himself. We want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen every day. You everydayers, thanks for being with us as always. If you're new to the show, welcome in. Come back all the time. We have a great community here, and we would love for you to be part of it. You can email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Maybe you have a story you want to share. Maybe you have a listener question or video you want to submit that Coach and I could talk about or answer. By the way, you can follow us on Twitter. Coach is at Coach Rob Buffs. I'm at Isaac Schade. And of course, you can follow the show at Locked On Heels. Don't forget to subscribe on video and audio formats. If you're watching, smash the like button so we know you're here. And we'd love to hear your comments on today's show. As always, it's a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk to you again tomorrow where we preview the App State game. Hopefully not as high scoring as it was last year, at least on the App State side of things. We'll talk to you then. But for now, peace.